Good morning, good afternoon, Black women, wherever you are in the world today. My name is Tonier. Welcome to the channel. I am the Self-Care Maven, and I am a women's self-care and health coach for Black women over 40, and I help them reclaim their health, their wellness, their autonomy through decolonized self-care. Now, today's topic is in line with one of my earlier videos where I talked about 3 archetypes of Black women that are fast-tracking their way to death. And in light of Ryan Coogler's Sinners, today, I wanted to talk about that a little bit in the context of self-care. I haven't seen the movie yet. I've seen a lot of reviews. I've seen a lot of breakdowns of the movie, but that's not what today's about. Today is me encouraging you, in light of my previous videos where I talked about self-care in relation to Black women, our history around that, the history of this country around self-care, what it means to practice decolonized self-care as a Black woman. I truly encourage, this is the first time I'm ever going to say with my chest out, go and see a movie, because I want us to, if you're going to go see Sinners, look at the movie through a critical eye, 1, and 2, I want you to pay special attention to the archetypes of Black women that are presented to you. And I want you to consider that as we delve further. This weekend, I'm going to be doing another live session at 12 noon Central Standard Time, as always, at this channel right here where I talk about self-care. I'm not going to tell you what the topic is right now, but it's going to be in alignment with a lot of our thoughts regarding self-care, what that means for a Black woman, and living in the context not just of any society that is steeped in exploitation in the worst possible ways, discrimination, racism, how that impacts the health of Black women, and why it's super important as a Black woman that we all practice, reclaim, reach down, connect, and practice decolonized self-care. And that is the self-care that I talk about. That is the self-care that I offer to my clients when I have these intensive consultations. We talk about strategies. We talk about blueprints for self-care as a Black woman, decolonized self-care, because what's out there, it wasn't built for us. The version of self-care that is currently presented to everyone as something for everyone is really not for us. And in fact, it is harmful to us. And I would go so far as to say it is harmful for people of color regardless, women of color regardless, because the version, that capitalistic, colonized version of self-care that's being bandied about, is a hodgepodge of indigenous practices, ideas, routines, if you will, teachings that have been stolen from groups around the world, stripped of their cultural context and relevance, and just hodgepodge put together like some crazy zombie quilt, put together and marketed to the general public. And you wonder why it is largely ineffective, but it's really effective in one area, and that area is taking money out of your pocket. The true version of self-care, the decolonized version of self-care, particularly when I talk about self-care as a Black woman, as a Black person, is steeped in our practices, traditional practices and teachings from our culture, from our background, from our spiritual indigenous knowing. And I say indigenous, yes, there's an aspect of that that ties into us as Black people, because originally we were stolen, stripped, and everything else from our homeland. Our ancestors did not come here willingly. Okay? So that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to get too far in the weeds regarding how we got here or debate how we got here. We know the history, we've heard the stories, we've seen the data of how we got here. Now, within that context, there are indigenous practices. I've spoken in earlier videos where I talk about my the various cultures that make up my journey and what I had to tap into as a Black woman who has recent ties, not just to Black American culture, but African culture, specifically Nigerian culture, from where I come from. And so I had to create my own blueprint and strategies that were uniquely tailored to me in order to create a self-care that was effective, culturally relevant, and grounding for me as a Black woman. So, again, I implore you, if you're going to go do anything this coming weekend, I encourage my Black women everywhere, if you can, go and watch Ryan Coogler's Sinners. I'm not a horror movie buff. I really am not. I'm a scaredy cat. I'm a sci-fi girl. And I love action movies, rom-coms, and, deep, heart-wrenching movies. I love to analyze and look at those and just, ruminate on those. But in this particular case, this is an awesome movie that's got a lot of historical context for us as Black people. It reaches into a lot of genres and a lot of themes that Black people are continuing to navigate. And so with that in mind, I thought a lot of this movie was relevant to the conversation of self-care for Black women, particularly the one around archetypes of Black women. So when you go watch that movie, if you go watch that movie, I want you to look at the archetypes of Black women presented in that movie. Have those discussions and consider community, what community has to say about that, because I'm leading into something that's very important that I guess is, you could say, is the elephant in the room when it comes to Black women having the space to self-care. Because we know women as a collective have been conditioned to prioritize everything else before themselves. And when it comes to Black women, that's on a whole nother level. Deprioritizing ourselves, living on the altar of other people's expectations has been drummed into most Black women across the board. We have not been able to escape that regardless of socioeconomic status. We've had to deal with that because Black women live at the point of intersectionality. Black women experience oppression couched in different forms, whether it's religion, whether it's community, whether it's some other dogma. Black women have been conditioned and punished as well when it comes to self-care. And so that's why I think this is a particularly important conversation to have leading into this weekend. off the back of sinners, because we know that we as a people collectively, we have created certain strategies and blueprints for navigating racism, discrimination in this society. And I spoke of in the previous video, in a previous live as well, when I talked about not just archetypes of Black women who are killing themselves, but I touched briefly on how our strategies have become maladaptive. And if we are going to thrive as Black women and improve our health outcomes, if we're going to live liberated lives, undomesticated, on our terms as Black women, living in true liberation, living in true autonomy, wellness, and abundance, you have got to decolonize your self-care, because self-care is foundational. Don't get it twisted. Self-care is foundational to a life well lived, one that's healthy, fulfilled, and thriving. If you want to thrive as a Black woman, if you want to live your best life, if you want to truly flower and bloom when it comes to your abilities, when it comes to the gifts that you have been imbued with on this plane of existence, self-care is the foundation of all of that. Self-care is the foundation of community. Contrary to popular belief, you are not evil, you are not a sinner if you self-care as a Black woman. Let's get it right. And so that's why I am challenging you to go watch Sinners if you can. In some kind of way, shape, or form, go watch Sinners, because I want you to look at the archetypes. A lot of people are talking about, oh, it's a brilliant movie. It's very culturally relevant for us as Black people. It has a number of elements there. It has a number of themes as well, but it also has a number of lessons and points for us to consider as people. And a lot of those considerations have to do with the elephant in the room that, as a community, a number of our so-called leaders don't want to address. And one of those is misogyny, misogynoir in the Black community. That's one thing. The other is colonial mentality, also known as the plantation Negro syndrome. I can't say the hard R. And that was a term that I became well versed in before that was even a thing. I spoke on some earlier videos where I shared some of my own background, where my parents were Pan-Africanist. My mom was, particularly, she was in the movement and all of that. And one of the things one of the conversations she used to have with my grandfather on her side was that there is a mentality in the Black community that is harmful when it comes to us as a people, and when it comes to us particularly as Black women. And that is largely steeped in colonialism or plantationism, married to religion, and how that was wielded as a whip to make women conform in the Black community, and how detrimental that is to our health and wellness, particularly around the notion of self-care. So I want you to consider that. Tune in to Sunday's live. We'll be talking about that and some other themes. Archetypes of Black women will be huge. I'm considering making this a series of around self-care for Black women, as well as the archetype of Black women in relation to this, and how or not they access self-care or look at self-care depending on what archetype you fall into. So if you haven't watched that video, make sure you tune into that. And some homework for you. Yes, that is actually homework. Go watch Ryan Coogler's Sinners, and let's have that conversation. Till next time, Tonya the Self-Care Maven. Peace out, y'all.